start off this Salisbury steak recipe, you're going to need some breadcrumbs. You can use regular store-bought panko, but I made my own. Here's how I did it. Whenever I bake bread, I always save the ends and I'll put them into a Ziploc baggie and stick them in the freezer. When I need breadcrumbs, I just let them thaw out and I blitz them in my food processor. Only takes a few seconds and it really is worth it. The flavor is so much better. Just let it run until you get it fine and the texture that you like. And then you're going to bake it. If you wanted flavored breadcrumbs, at this point you could add some butter and whatever herbs you like. And then you're just going to put it on a parchment covered cookie sheet and bake it on a really low setting for a while. And every now and then you're going to come and just give them a toss until they're all dry and crispy. Keep the temperature low though so you don't burn them. For this recipe, you'll need about a cup of breadcrumbs and 2 large eggs. Give the eggs a little mix and then add them to your breadcrumbs, and then to that add a half a cup of milk. Mix them up really well. And absolutely make sure that you pick the smallest bowl you could find so that you make a mess when you're stirring. Once you get all of that incorporated, just set it to the side and give your breadcrumbs some time to absorb the eggs and the milk. This is going to keep your steak patties from drying out when you cook them. If you're following the recipe as I have it written below, you're going to need about 2 pounds of ground beef. I had a house full of people on this night, so I'm using slightly more than that. To your ground beef, you're going to add 2 teaspoons of salt and a teaspoon of black pepper, 2 teaspoons of granulated garlic, and you want a whole grated onion. And I'm telling you, if you do this, wear goggles because it's like chemical warfare in your kitchen, or maybe hire somebody else to do it. The grated onion gives the meat a really nice texture and flavor. Go ahead and add your breadcrumbs. And then you're going to want to mix all of this together really well. You don't want to overwork the meat because then your patties will be tough. But you do want to make sure that you get everything evenly distributed throughout the meat. When you're shaping your meat patties, try to make them into an oval shape and not too thick. I went a little crazy here, but I had, like I said, a lot of people in the house and they are all big eaters, so I just made really big patties. The recipe as it's written makes about 8 decent sized patties, but because I used more meat, I had quite a few more than that. So once you shape your patties, move them to a parchment covered cookie sheet because you're going to want to refrigerate this meat for about 10 minutes before you go ahead and cook it. I ended up with more patties than my cookie sheet would hold, so I laid another layer of parchment paper down so that they wouldn't stick together while they were in the fridge. Chill your meat for 10 minutes, and while you're waiting, you can move on to your gravy. You want to start with about 3 cups of beef broth, and to that add 4 teaspoons of Worcestershire sauce and 2 tablespoons of cornstarch. Whisk it together really well, and then just set it to the side. You want your pan to be nice and hot so that you can sear your patties. Go ahead and add a couple tablespoons of whatever oil you prefer and let your pan heat up. Once it's nice and hot, you're just going to sear your burger patties for about 2 to 3 minutes on each side. We're not trying to get them cooked all the way through, we're just trying to get a nice brown crust on them. This adds a whole lot of flavor. I had quite a bit of meat that I needed to brown, so I just basically worked through it in small batches, 4 or 5 patties in the pan at a time so that I didn't overcrowd them. Once your hamburger patties have formed a nice crust on both sides, just remove them to a plate. Into the same pan that I cooked the hamburger in, I added 1 medium diced onion and about a tablespoon of minced garlic and sauteed them around in the juices from the meat. It might look like a lot of juice and fat, but mushrooms are like sponges and they're going to absorb that and just add another layer of flavor to your supper. This is 16 ounces of diced baby bella mushrooms. You can use just regular button mushrooms, but I really like the flavor of the baby bellas. Just saute those around. You'll see they start to absorb the juice from the hamburger. And, like I said, it just adds another dimension of flavor. And this is completely optional, but I added a teaspoon of red pepper flake because I do like a little bit of heat in my food. You can leave that out if you like. I'm also adding a teaspoon of thyme because mushrooms do love thyme. Just let them saute for a while until the mushrooms and the onions start to get soft. Once they've cooked down for a bit, you're going to want to make a little well in the center of your pan and add 2 tablespoons of tomato paste. And you're just going to allow this to cook a little longer so that the raw flavor of the tomato paste can cook out and it can kind of melt down and absorb into the mushrooms. To your mushroom mixture, you're going to add that beef broth that we stirred up earlier with the cornstarch. Make sure you stir it again really well before you add it because the cornstarch has a tendency to settle to the bottom. And this is what's going to thicken your gravy. You could add salt and pepper at this point, but I didn't buy low sodium broth, so I figured that the salt level was fine. But by all means, it's your recipe. Season how you like. I turned my heat down to medium, and when I noticed that the sauce started to thicken and bubble a little bit in the middle, I started to add my hamburger patties back. They're going to finish cooking in the gravy. And it was kind of at this point that I realized I made a ton of hamburger steak patties, and I was not so sure that I was going to fit them all in the gravy, but I am a Tetris champion, and I did figure it out. So just add your meat patties back. Once you get them all in there and get them as covered as you can with the gravy, add a lid and just let them cook for a while. I came back after about 8 or 10 minutes and I decided to take the internal temperature of the hamburger steaks. Hamburger, when it's cooked at a proper temperature, should be at least 160 degrees in the center. And as you'll see here, some of my hamburger patties that were more submerged are coming above 160 degrees Fahrenheit and some are below, so I decided to put the lid back on and let it go for about another 5 minutes. Once all of your hamburger patties are at the appropriate temperature, your Salisbury steak is ready to serve. I served my Salisbury steak over mashed potatoes, and if you want to see how I make my mashed potatoes, I'll leave an iCard up at the top of the video right here. But it's equally as good on egg noodles or rice or really anything. It's good even just by itself with no carbs. My family really enjoyed this meal. They were all super full afterwards and said that I definitely needed to make this again sometime soon. I really hope that you do give this recipe a try, and if you do, please make sure you leave me a comment below and let me know what you thought of it, or even how you changed it to suit your family's needs. As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.